everyone! Today I'm going to be doing a deeper dive into depression, something that a lot of us have heard about or experienced firsthand, me included. And while a lot of people may know what it feels like, they might not know what it actually takes to get diagnosed with depression. So I'm going to be talking about that today. And why am I even talking about it at all? Well, it's part of the depressive subtype of schizoaffective disorder, so I was bound to talk about it eventually. And if you are new here, welcome. My name is Kit, and I have something called schizoaffective disorder, which is a condition where someone experiences symptoms of schizophrenia, such as delusions and hallucinations, but also symptoms of a mood disorder, either major depression, or in my case, bipolar. And so with that out of the way, let's see what the DSM-5 has to say about depression, because of course, we need the source material. And like I have to say in all these videos where I open up this book, I do not encourage self-diagnosis. I do these videos to raise awareness and to educate people on just what exactly might be going on in the mental health world, right? Like what exactly is going on in this book. But I am no substitute for a doctor, a therapist, or any other trained mental health professional. And nothing in this video is medical advice. Thank you. So I want to start off by saying that what a lot of us think of when we think of depression, we're actually thinking about a condition called major depressive disorder, or MDD. In order to be diagnosed with major depressive disorder, you have to have something called a depressive episode. And the criteria for that major depressive episode is also what defines the depressive subtype of schizoaffective disorder. But I'll get into that later. So major depressive disorder itself is characterized by having major depressive episodes in the absence of manic and hypomanic episodes. Many people who initially present with depressive episodes go on to develop mania and hypomania, and thus that would land them the diagnosis of either bipolar 1 or bipolar 2 disorder respectively. Anyway, the big thing with major depressive disorder is that within a 2-week period, you have to have 5 of the following 9 things. This is criterion A, and it's arguably the most important. The first and most obvious symptom is depressed mood, and the person has to experience this most of the day, nearly every day. It includes feelings of being sad, hopeless, or empty. And it can be subjective to the person experiencing it. Like someone might say, hey, I feel depressed. Or it can be observed by others, which would be, hey, you look depressed. And this is the classic thing that a lot of people think of when they think of depression in general, is just depressed mood. But as you will learn in this video, there's so much more to major depressive disorder than just feeling depressed. The second symptom is diminished interest or pleasure in almost all activities during the day, nearly every day. So the depressed person just wouldn't find joy in the things that would normally make them happy. And the person might not be interested in doing, well, anything, including things like getting out of bed and showering. And again, this can be subjective, so the person who's experiencing it might realize something is going on or observed by others. And just a quick side note here, in order to be diagnosed with a major depressive episode, one of the 2 symptoms that I just listed has to be met. Anyways, on with the rest of the symptoms. The third symptom is significant weight loss or weight gain, or diminished or increased appetite nearly every day. And this just goes to show you that even within the DSM, people with depression react differently to the disease. Stress eating is very common, but also not eating is also common. I know people on both ends of this spectrum, and I also know people that have been on either end at different times during their lives. And one person can be on both ends at different times too. The fourth symptom is sleep disturbances, meaning that someone can have insomnia, where they're not sleeping enough, or hypersomnia, where they're sleeping too much. And this has to happen nearly every day. The DSM also goes on to list a few more different types of sleep disturbances that can be observed. So someone might have trouble falling asleep, someone might have an issue waking up too early and not being able to fall back to sleep, someone might having problems staying asleep. So it's not just sleeping too much or sleeping too little. There's all types of disturbances that can happen. The fifth symptom is psychomotor agitation or retardation, and it happens to happen, you guessed it, nearly every day. This means that the person can be moving too much or not moving much at all. Like it's possible for the person to just not be able to stop moving. Things like fidgeting and pacing are common. And on the other end, they might just be slow in all aspects of motion. Slow to get out of bed, slow to shower, slow to talk, if they even try any of those things. And it's important that this symptom is observed by others. While the person experiencing it may realize what's going on, other people have to see this one in order for it to be, checked off. The sixth symptom is fatigue or loss of energy nearly every day. This is one of the most common things I hear when people talk about the way depression affects them. Someone just doesn't have the energy to do daily activities. And again, this plays into the classic stereotype of the depressed person not being able to get out of bed. It's because they're tired all the time. And this is why it's hard for someone to dress themselves, brush their teeth, shower, eat, do anything, because if you were tired all the time, you wouldn't really want to do anything either. The seventh symptom is feelings of worthlessness or excessive or inappropriate guilt, not having to do with just being sick and happening, you guessed it, again, nearly every day. And this can also fall into the category of being delusional. Examples of this can be the depressed person thinking that all of their friends hate them, that they are a burden to them, and that they're not worth being friends with. Basically anything that could really start a downward spiral of emotion, even though those exact same friends would never actually do such a thing. But the depressed person firmly believes it to be true. And that's just a mild example of what depression can do to really warp someone's brain. When I was actually reading about major depressive disorder in the DSM, it mentioned that a possible delusion for a depressed person to experience was believing that they themselves were personally responsible for world poverty. And I know that sounds really out of proportion, but that's what mental illness does. It really takes life and throws it way out of proportion. So yeah, delusions can be a thing. The eighth symptom is a diminished ability to think or concentrate, including indecisiveness. It has to happen nearly every day and can be observed by the individual or by someone else close to them. And this is really where occupational impairments can come into play. Someone who's depressed can have a hard time remembering simple things and be easily distracted. And if someone has a very demanding job in terms of cognitive ability, then the person might not even be able to function at work. And this contributes to that work and affects relationships, both things that are huge aspects to someone's existence. And the person who's depressed might realize that this is going on, yes, but in order to meet the criteria, someone else can also see it too. And really, if someone can't concentrate or make decisions at work, then their job can be at stake, and the same thing goes for relationships. And the ninth and final symptom of this whole thing is recurrent thoughts of death or dying. And before I go any further on this symptom, I want you guys to know that if you or someone you know are struggling with anything having to do with unaliving in general, there are resources in the description box down below. You are not alone. You can get through this. Keep going. Okay, back to the video. Surprisingly, this is the one criteria on this entire list that doesn't have to be experienced nearly every day. I want to make a point here that unaliving ideation, unaliving thoughts, unaliving plans, unaliving attempts, they're not run-of-the-mill for every depressed person. Yes, it's common. That's why it's a symptom. That's why it's in the list, but not every person who's depressed wants to unalive themselves. And those that do want to unalive themselves, a lot of it comes from a place of they're experiencing immense amounts of an emotional pain, and the unaliving option is a thing that seems like the best way to make that pain stop. But a lot of people I know who are depressed, me included, just kind of want to sleep forever when they're in that state. The ideation is like, okay, let's freeze time. Okay, let's slip into a pocket dimension. Okay, let's just disappear and sleep and just not exist. Not necessarily something absolutely violent or heartbreaking or any of the other things you see in the news when you hear about people who do this stuff. Like the people who are actually depressed and going through those thoughts, it's not always what people think. But I don't want to speak too much about that. And if this part of the video is cut a little bit weird, it's because I was having trouble saying what I wanted to say in a way that, I don't know, I'm not always good with these things. So yeah, if it's cut weird, I apologize. But if not, I'll just cut that out. No, I probably kept it in. Yeah, I kept it in. Anyway, unaliving thoughts and stuff, that's pretty common, but also not wanting to unalive yourself, but still being depressed is also very common. And so after someone experiences 5 out of the 9 things that I just mentioned, they have to have significant distress or impairment in multiple aspects of their life, whether it's social, occupational, or other levels of functioning. And this is criterion B. And so this is where really the saddest part of the DSM comes out to play, because these very serious disorders, like major depressive disorder, is an extremely serious condition, and as you're probably learning throughout this video, it can cause quite the ruckus in someone's brain. But in order to be diagnosed with these disorders, they basically have to be either ruining your life or already ruined it in order to actually get the diagnosis. Now, the upside of this is that getting the diagnosis will get someone the help they need, and it will give them their life back. They might be able to stop it from being completely ruined thanks to the help of modern medicine. But I still think it's a pretty sad thing, and I see it a lot in this in this big book, and it makes me sad. But yeah, anyway, treatment's great. And so just real quickly, criterion C is that none of this can be attributed to substance use or another medical condition. And the last two criteria, D and E, basically say that the episode, which is defined by the first three criteria, cannot be due to another mental disorder, like bipolar, schizoaffective, schizophrenia, schizophreniform, you get the idea, and that there has never been a manic or a hypomanic episode, which would make the person being diagnosed actually have either bipolar 1 or bipolar 2 disorder or even schizoaffective disorder. And that is all the criteria that someone needs in order to be diagnosed with major depressive disorder. But how does this really tie into schizoaffective disorder? I've touched on it a little bit, but I really want to explore that now. And it's that those first three criteria, the ones that say what a major depressive episode is, A, B, and C, define what those with the depressed subtype of schizoaffective disorder experience. However, those with the depressed subtype of schizoaffective disorder have to experience psychosis in the midst of those depressive episodes. And this is referred to as psychotic depression, and the person might be delusional, disorganized, or hallucinating in the midst of the mood episode. And if someone just meets the criteria for major depressive disorder, they can actually have psychosis in their episodes as well. It's not just schizoaffectives that deal with psychotic depression. The only thing is that psychosis is only experienced during mood episodes. If psychosis occurs outside a mood episode, then it's schizoaffective. But for me personally, my experience with depression, well, I experienced this overwhelming amount of hopelessness when it comes to, well, everything. Depression is like this thing that sucks the life out of everything I do or experience. It makes me feel like my life isn't worth living because nothing is fun anymore. And a lot of people with depression would say the same, that their disease just makes them feel disinterested and hopeless and sad, worthless. My body feels very heavy, and my bed is the most inviting thing. Like, getting out of bed in the morning is my biggest struggle when it comes to depression. And that is all I have to say about depression in this video. If you experience depression, what is it like for you? Did any of these symptoms shock you? I know some of them shocked me. So let me know in the comment section down below. You guys know I'm there after every single video, but you can also reach out to me on Twitter and Instagram at SchizoKitso, because I love talking to you guys about mental health and getting feedback, because your feedback helps me make better videos for you guys in the future. But anyway, that's all for today. Thank you for joining me and making the uncomfortable comfortable, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye bye.